Next on the news, before the pomp and circumstance, prayer and reflection for Catholic students across the Diocese of Brooklyn.
They have mastered middle school, and now Bishop Robert Brennan is guiding them on to high school. I'm Katie Vasquez, and I'll have details on the 8th grade graduation mass coming up.
The Vatican is preparing for the coming conclave. Firefighters put up the iconic chimney, which will let the faithful know when we have a new pope. Plus, more than 100 young artists sent in their best work. Now the tablet editors are becoming art critics as judging begins for the paper's Easter art contest. I'm Christine Persichetti. Currents News starts right now. Soon they'll be graduating, but before they head off to high school in the Diocese of Brooklyn, the 8th graders gathered for Mass with their bishop for prayers of guidance and a little advice. Currents News' Katie Vasquez was at the Co-Cathedral of St. Joseph in Prospect Heights.
They have spent years forming friendships and growing their faith. And on Friday, hundreds of 8th graders from across the Diocese of Brooklyn came together with their bishop to get ready for the next step in their journey, high school. It was a mass energized by Young Faith, the Jornada movement, a Hispanic youth ministry that brings teens and adults together for retreats and faith-building reflections, providing the music to get these soon-to-be graduates pumped up for this special liturgy. The Mass at the Co-Cathedral of St. Joseph brings the 1,800 8th grade students in the Diocese of Brooklyn together with their shepherd. Since Bishop Robert Brennan says attending each graduation ceremony would be otherwise impossible, as each student prepares to move on to Catholic high schools across the diocese, they hope they can continue their relationship with God they first built in their Catholic academies.
Archbishop Malloy also has very spiritual, they have a lot of faith programs, so I'm hoping even though Sacred Heart, we've done so much things in church and to grow in faith, Archbishop Malloy also will be helping me grow in faith spiritually.
I hope to, possibly become a altar server in that school, become someone known for their passion through Christ and to do his works through me.
We certainly hope that when our kids graduate here, they stay close to the Lord. It's very easy to do when you're in our schools. Most of them are going to our Catholic high schools. Then there'll be no problem. Our Catholic high schools are paradigms of Catholic identity and Catholic imagination.
That's very encouraging, and whether it be through the Catholic high schools, which we really want to encourage, or through their parish youth programs, that they stay connected. Being connected is so important.
There's so many graduates in the class of 2025, the diocese had to split the celebration into 2 different masses. The second one will take place on May 9th. In Prospect Heights, Katie Vasquez, Currents News.
To read more about what Bishop Robert Brennan said to the 8th graders of the diocese, go to thetablet.org. We are counting down to the conclave, and over at the Vatican, they've installed a key feature in the process to pick the next pope. The Vatican Fire Brigade climbed onto the Sistine Chapel's roof Friday morning to put in place the iconic chimney that will let the faithful waiting in St. Peter's Square know when the next Holy Father has been chosen. The conclave goes far beyond just casting a simple ballot. It's an ancient practice that has its own rules and regulations. The idea of cardinals picking a new pope dates back centuries, but the conclaves Catholics have come to know today first began in the 13th century. After the longest conclave ever elected Pope Gregory X, it took 2 years and 9 months. It was that Holy Father who would create the rules the Red Hats still follow today. Technically, any Roman Catholic male can be elected the leader of the Universal Church. But since the 14th century, every pope has previously been a cardinal. The task of electing the next successor of St. Peter falls to the College of Cardinals. They must be younger than 80 years old to participate, and all eligible candidates must vote in person. Before they start voting, all the Red Hats, including those over 80, gather for crucial meetings in Rome. It's here that the big questions facing the church are discussed and potential candidates start to emerge. The conclave officially begins with a prayer service in the Sistine Chapel. The princes of the Catholic Church will pray the Litany of the Saints before entering in procession into the Sistine Chapel, where they are sealed inside. They aren't allowed to speak to anyone outside of the process, read media reports, receive messages, or discuss the details of the elections afterwards. If they break the conclave's secrecy rules, they risk excommunication. Once the voting starts, they write a candidate's name on a ballot, and in order of seniority, they drop them into a chalice. Cardinals aren't allowed to vote for themselves. The results are recorded by 3 designated cardinals. To be elected pope, a candidate needs to get 2/3 of the vote. They'll cast their votes 4 times a day, every day, until they reach that threshold, and the man chosen accepts the decision of the cardinals. If no man is elected after 4 days, the conclave breaks for prayer and discussion before trying again. The ballots are burned after each round of voting. If there's no winner, a chemical is added to turn the smoke black, so the people waiting in St. Peter's Square know that a new pope has not yet been chosen. But when the pope has been elected, a different chemical is added to ensure the smoke comes out white, signaling a new pontiff. Finally, a senior cardinal tells the world, "We have a pope," and introduces the new Holy Father to the crowd gathered in St. Peter's Square. Then the new pope goes out onto the balcony to make his first remarks and give his blessing. Since 1900, the average conclave has lasted about 3 days. Pope Francis and Pope Benedict XVI both took 2 days to be elected. Bishop Brennan has lived through 5 papacies and recalls his conclave experiences in his podcast, Big City Catholics. Sitting down with the tablet's editor emeritus, Ed Wilkinson, the Brooklyn Shepherd talks about whether he thinks the next Holy Father will be like his predecessor.
The next pope has to be his own man. But I think there are points of continuity. And I think you see this even when you look, again, I'm talking about my conscious lifetime. My lifetime's a little longer. But as I look at John Paul II, Benedict, and now Francis, there are moments of continuity, but each man has a certain style. And I think the next pope has to be himself.
You can listen to Bishop Brennan and Ed's full conversation on his podcast, Big City Catholics, at podcast.dioceseofbrooklyn.org or search for Big City Catholics on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Be sure to stick with Currents News for full coverage of the conclave in Rome. Our Currents News' Katie Vasquez and Melissa Butts-Corsi will be in the Eternal City for the historic vote, which will begin on May 7th. So be sure to tune into Currents News for all the latest. The Diocese of Brooklyn is joining the Universal Church as the Novem Dialis, or 9 days of mourning, continues for Pope Francis.
We prayed tonight, offering these petitions for Pope Francis, for the eternal rest of his soul, for
Monsignor Sean Ogle, the chairman of the board of Net TV's parent company, DeSales Media Group, celebrated a mass for the late Holy Father at the Co-Cathedral of St. Joseph. Monsignor Ogle spoke about how the people's pope promoted care for God's creation and each other during his 12-year-long papacy. Currents News continues to mourn Pope Francis with a special airing this weekend. We remember the funeral mass for the late Holy Father, plus take a look at his legacy in the Diocese of Brooklyn and the Universal Church. That's this Saturday and Sunday at 7 right here on Currents News. An event in Brooklyn was all about honoring Franciscan values as St. Francis College held its 2025 Charter Award dinner. The NYPD Jazz Band kicked things off at the beautiful Giando on the Water. $250,000 was raised as the college paid tribute to the incredible legacy of the Franciscan Brothers of Brooklyn and honored Frank Siller, founder of the Tunnel to Towers Foundation. I had the honor of emceeing the event. Turning now to a big trial out of Astoria, a mock trial that takes a classic beyond the book.
That's just Mr. Finch's way.
The students of St. Francis of Assisi Catholic Academy recreating a scene from the iconic book To Kill a Mockingbird. They acted out the book's main event, the trial of a black man accused of assaulting a white woman in the 1930s South. The kids say taking part in the mock trial brought the book's themes to life.
I understood that it's very important that prejudices should not be tolerated in any courts. And even in my speech, I said courts are the greatest leveler in American history, and you should not be under prejudice. You should not be judged just because of how you look or what your background is.
I think the whole topic of like how segregation happened and everything was bad. It should there was no point of it. There's nothing wrong with everyone made in God's image and likeness. So there's no point in making fun of one person's ethnicity than another person's ethnicity. So that's just kind of that's my initial thought in hearing about racism from the book and everything.
Another moral of the story that people don't realize is that you can do your best to help those who are caught in those kinds of situations, like Atticus. He chose to take on the case and work very hard to try and beat it, even though the odds were against him.
The idea was brought to the school last year by the Grand Knight of a local council, Mario Massa. Massa also brought a real-life judge to take part in the mock trial. And finally tonight, we give a nod to the young artists of the Diocese of Brooklyn as the tablet's Easter Art Contest has come to a close. 150 students from across Brooklyn and Queens put their pencils and crayons to paper to depict Christ's resurrection for the annual competition. Done in partnership with the Archbishop John Hughes Council of the Knights of Columbus, the winning artists will receive certificates, cash prizes, and have their work published in the tablet. Wow. Judging is going on now, and the young Picassos will hear if they won in the coming days. Good luck to all of them. That is this Currents News Update. I'm Christine Persichetti. Thank you for joining us because we are putting your faith in the news. Hope to see you again next time.